Moving on to our next session for the day, we have Siddharth Desai from Kishore Pumps, the Joint Managing Director at Kishore Pumps, and he's going to be presenting about the innovations and adaptations in mechanical design from field experiences. And maybe after this session is over, I will take some of the technical questions that the audiences have put during the panel discussion. Over to you, Siddharth.
Thank you, Kailaji. I should start my presentation. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So once again, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Pump Symposia by Smart Water and Waste World. What I would like to now discuss upon is some of the adaptations and leading innovations that are possible in the mechanical design of pumps based on field experiences, because it often happens, especially in infrastructure and in industrial applications, that how users operate the pumps in field are very different than how the pumps are designed in the factory or in the office. So bridging that gap, I think, is very important, and the field experiences teach you how to do that. So I'll cover 3 or 4 specific type of adaptations, learnings from the field, and adaptations what are being done in the pump industry overall. So one of the features specifically what affects the what is typically known as centrifugal pumps or other horizontal end suction pumps is the technical term for that. So OH2 type horizontal end suction pumps. These are the pumps which have a cantilever portion and a simply supported portion in its construction. So what you see in the screen in front of me right now, this is the shaft. Here, the drive shaft on which the impeller is mounted inside the casing. You have the mechanical sealing, and then the bearings, which are taking all the forces and the loads and supporting the pump. Now, classical mechanics, what we learn is that the portion between these two bearings is what we call as a simply supported bearing, a simply supported structure, and the portion of the shaft beyond this is what is called as the overhang or the cantilever portion of it. Now, when a pump operates, I'll try to focus on the drive assembly only and make the other static parts more transparent. So when a pump operates, when a pump is running, the pump is generating the pressure and discharging the liquid from the casing at the top. There is a force, what is called as the radial thrust. I'll come to what is radial thrust in a bit, but the radial thrust which acts on the pump in perpendicular direction to the shaft assembly, and at the same time it is supported by the bearing. So the orange bar is the force generated by way of operation of the pump, and the blue bars or blue arrows is the reaction to that force which is provided by the bearings to the shaft. So what is radial thrust is that the force resulting from the pump delivering the liquid through the discharge bore, that is from the top here, and it is a function of the pressure at which the pump is operating multiplied by the area of the vane thickness, annular area of the impeller of the between the two shrouds. So force, that is pressure multiplied by area, that is force. So pressure is what the pump is operating at, and the area is the annular area of the area between the two shrouds. So that is the radial thrust, and it acts in perpendicular direction to the direction of rotation of the pump. That is why it is called radial. Now the pump bearing end, here they are supposed to take the radial thrust here. This primarily takes the radial thrust. These bearings are designed to take other types of forces. And as I mentioned that in end suction pumps or horizontal end suction pumps, this is where the force has its primary effect on the overhang portion or the cantilever portion. Sorry. Now, if you refer to pump handbook or the pump technology data, what happens is this I've tried to plot a graph of the flow rate on the x-axis as a percentage of the rated flow And on the y-axis is the percentage of the radial thrust at shutoff. So at shutoff, many of you or all of you know that at shutoff, the pump generates the maximum pressure, what we call as the shutoff head or the shutoff pressure. So at shutoff, the radial thrust on the pump is maximum. What is basically why this is one of the reasons why pump manufacturers suggest not to use the pump or at or near shutoff. One of the reasons for this is that this radial thrust is maximum. As you go on opening the valve and you come to the desired flow rate of that particular pump, the radial thrust drops drastically until it rises further. So the pump design or the pump bearings are designed to operate within a certain range. Depending on the manufacturer, depending on the application, the manufacturer suggests to operate the pump between, let's say, 20% of the rated flow to 120% of the rated flow, or 40% to 120, or 60 to 120. That varies from manufacturer to manufacturer, depending on what type of bearing selection and bearing design is there. Now, what we are trying to understand is that how this force, what is called as radial thrust, how it affects the pump reliability, and why pumps fail, and how we can, what we can do to reduce the effect of this force, because we cannot reduce the radial thrust. Radial thrust is a function of the hydraulics. How the radial thrust, the effect of radial thrust can be reduced on the pump assembly to increase the reliability, reduce downtime, is the main focus of this particular adaptation or this innovation. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the simply supported portion of the shaft, and this is the cantilever or the overhang portion of the shaft. Now, the effect of the radial thrust on the pump operation is that it leads to a deflection of the shaft, leading to the mechanical seal wear and tear. So there is, as this orange arrow forces down that impeller, the mechanical seal leads to deflection on the shaft, which leads to deflection on the mechanical seal, and it leads to vibrations, and also efficiency might be reduced of this pump. So these are the effects of the radial thrust on the pump. Now, what we as manufacturers, or all manufacturers, we try to work on is how we can reduce the effect or the impact of this radial thrust on the pump. As I said, we cannot reduce the radial thrust completely, but we can reduce the impact of that radial thrust on the pump. So one way to combat or reduce the impact of the radial thrust on the pump is to design a volute or a casing with what is called as the double volute. There are two separate flow paths inside the casing, which neutralize the effect of the radial thrust on the pump. But this particular approach is typically used for bigger size pumps. When I say bigger size, when the discharge bore is, let's say, more than 80 or 100, and especially typically more than 150 millimeter diameter, because it is for smaller pumps, it is costly to do that. And in smaller pumps, it will eat up a lot of the efficiency. It leads to a lot of eating up the efficiency, especially in smaller pumps. Large pumps, the cost is relatively, cost increase is relatively less, and the efficiency loss is also relatively less. So that's why larger pumps can adopt the design of using a double volute casing. The second approach is designing the rotating assembly, that is this particular assembly, the solid assembly, what you see right now, to better handle the radial thrust. So how it can be done is by, sorry, you can see I'm just switching the slides here. You can see the position and location of that bearing, the front pump and bearing. So by taking the bearing a little bit on the frontal side near the impeller, towards the impeller, we can reduce the length of this overhang of this pump. And this will lead to reduced impact because it will reduce the bending moment at the bearing. Bending moment is a function of the force multiplied by the distance, that's the cantilever distance. So this particular length from the bearing to the end of the impeller, that length is reduced by changing the location or position of this bearing, and this leads to reduced deflection on the shaft because the bending moment is reduced. So this is one way how we can combat the ill effects or the bad effects of the radial thrust on the horizontal end suction pump. So this is an adaptation from field experiences, learning from field experiences that pump manufacturers have considered. The second example I would like to cover now is regarding the vertical pumps, or typically referred to as the VS4 type of pumps. And what you see on the right hand side is the typical VS4 pump, which is used very commonly in many applications. And the left hand side is a modified design based on site applications to do that. In a vertical pump, the same concept of radial thrust also happens, because you have an impeller that is generating the pressure, and you have a casing that is delivering that pressure through the discharge bore, and that leads to a radial thrust. So what happens here is, as the liquid is going out from the casing, the blue arrow is the liquid, there is an equal and opposite reaction in the opposite direction, the orange arrow, which is the radial thrust. Now you can imagine in vertical pumps, where majority of the support or the bearing fixture is coming from the top, there is a long shaft assembly, which leads to a more magnified impact of the radial thrust on the bearing, on the impeller and the shaft. Because as you can imagine, the distance between the supports is much longer in vertical type of pumps. So the impact of radial thrust on vertical pumps is much worse than in horizontal end suction pumps, what we saw earlier. So we need to, especially in vertical pumps, it is very important to reduce or minimize the impact of this radial thrust on the pump to increase the reliability of the pump. Because for vertical pumps, the downtime is very expensive considering the procedure for maintenance. For all manufacturers, the objective is to reduce the downtime of vertical pumps. And one of the main reasons for downtime of a vertical pump is the damage to the intermediate bearings. That is what we call sleeve bush here. So replacing the sleeve bush is one of the major causes of downtime in vertical pumps. So to reduce the impact of radial thrust, our primary objective is to reduce the wear and tear of the sleeve bush, the intermediate bearings, so that the downtime can be reduced and the reliability can be increased. Now, to do this, there are approaches by which we can have the volute or the casing designed in a way that discharges an equal amount of liquid in the same pressure, but in opposite direction, that is in 180 degrees apart. So it balances out the imbalanced radial thrust. So what I call is imbalanced radial thrust is, this is an imbalanced radial thrust. This is only in one direction, the orange arrow. Whereas with this particular configuration or with this particular design, we can balance out the imbalanced radial thrust, and this also leads to minimal, if not fully zero, minimal deflection on the shaft. And that is our objective. By minimizing the deflection on the shaft, the intermediate bearings can be well protected and the downtime can be reduced further. So this is the second innovation or adaptation that we have done. This is just an example or an illustration of the radial thrust with different types of volutes. So the blue volute or blue line that you see is what we also saw earlier in the end suction pumps design. That is what we call as the single volute, wherein the radial thrust is very high at shutoff. It reduces, and at near the best efficiency point or the duty point of the pump, it is very low, and then again increases as the valve is increased open further. Then based on the volute designs, there are further modifications. So you have a modified concentric volute, which is the orange line, where the radial thrust is reduced to a certain extent. The double volute is typically used in large size of pumps where it is further reduced. And the double delivery, what we refer to is here, that you have a single drive with two shafts, two delivery pipes coming at 180 degrees apart. That is the green line here. That is the type of design or a volute which can offer you the least amount of radial thrust across the entire range of operation of the pump. Now, what are the advantages of this? Is that it leads to balanced hydraulics for trouble-free operation. Longer shaft lengths with less intermediate supports are possible. So typically pumps of more than 1.2 or 1.5 meter in length, vertical pumps, they do require intermediate supports. Now with this particular adaptation, we can go longer to 2.5 meters without any intermediate support. So the cost of the pump is reduced and the downtime requirement or the maintenance requirements also reduced. Then in some applications where external flushing is required, that won't be required in this case. More importantly, this pump offers, this type of adaptation offers the flexibility to operate that pump at very wide range. As I mentioned earlier, that most manufacturers or all manufacturers, they do restrict the range of operation within 40 to 120% of the best efficiency point or the duty point, or 60% to 120%. So this particular adaptation or this particular modification, I would say, can allow a wider range of operation of the pump. So it's beneficial from the user's perspective that it can accommodate a wider range of flow depending on what kind of application is there. Even if there is, the possibility is less, but even if there is a dry run of the pump, that can also, I mean, that won't be a problem for this kind of modification, because even if the pump runs dry, if provided it is a cantilever or a pump that does not have intermediate supports, even if the pump runs dry, it does not lead to any damage to the pump, and obviously less spares are needed for this kind of design. The third approach is I wanted to focus on the point that we discussed earlier during the panel also, that is the effect of the solid size or the passage of solid passage size on the pump efficiency. Now, what this slide shows is the typical solid handling requirements within a sewage treatment plant. So when you take the raw sewage in the plant, what was typically called as the raw sewage intake pumps, they need the highest or the largest size of solids, because they are coming from the raw sewers or the raw sewer pipelines. There, provided the screens are there, we can further reduce the solid size passage, but typically we need to have 100 millimeter solid size for several reasons. Provided the screenings are properly done, it can be reduced further. So we start with pumps which are able to handle up to 100 millimeter solid size. Then as we go from the primary preliminary treatment, I would say the preliminary treatment to the primary treatment, that is the settling tanks, the primary clarifiers, there a lot of the solids are reduced or large solids are settled, taken out. And then in the sludge pumps, that is the aeration basins, the solid size is can now be controlled roughly around 40 to 50 millimeters. So that is 50 minutes. And then from there on, after the secondary clarifier or the secondary treatment, which is secondary treatment is aeration and the secondary clarifier. After that, it is as good as clear water. So then the solids requirement is almost close to zero or nil. Now, this is important for the manufacturer to know that the pumps being used or being selected or being asked for are to be used in which of these sections. Because based on the solid size, the pump design and the pump hydraulics can be changed, adapted or modified to maximize the reliability and the efficiency. So my colleague Vineet Kulkarni will discuss more on this later in his presentation, but this is just an overview of how the solid passage size affects the efficiency of the pump. So for the same duty point, more solid handling leads to less efficiency. So the red efficiency line, that is the efficiency curve of the pump, red line represents the 100 millimeter solid handling. And as the solid handling requirement goes down, the efficiency at that duty point goes on increasing. So it is important to understand the type of solid. So manufacturers have, based on their field experiences about this particular slide, that you do not need a 100 millimeter solid handling pump at the in the sludge basin or at the discharge site of the STP. They have recognized that, and many pump manufacturers are now offering the solid sizes or the pumps with solid sizes desirable or suitable for a particular location within a plant. So this is something that was not available earlier when the STP concept started in India. But now manufacturers are aware that you do not need a 100 millimeter solid size pump for the sludge basins or the aeration basins, as well as on the effluent or the discharge treated water discharge side. And the last point I want to focus is regarding the design modifications based on the site learnings in terms of the maintenance requirements. So as Mr. Vadhwane mentioned during the panel presentation, that the availability of trained and skilled manpower is day by day reducing at sites. So the manufacturers have to learn and adapt from that and offer designs which reduce the not only the maintenance requirements, but also reduce the way the pumps are to be maintained or repaired. So we have to recognize that the pump should be able to be maintained or repaired with minimum skill set available at site, or minimum trained manpower at site, and minimum possible tools or tackles available at site. So we cannot expect all the fixtures and facilities and tools and tackles to be available at site what we have in our factory during the manufacturing stage. So recognizing that, a lot of manufacturers have adopted to design the pumps in a way that are easier to do the maintenance and the repair procedures at site with minimum possible tools, and specifically no special tools should be required at site. So these are the learnings from site that we can incorporate in the pump design. What you see in your screen right now is a specific application for submersible pumps, wherein the cable, which is a special part of the submersible pump, typically cables are to be fitted or repaired in the workshops or in the factories itself, and rarely at sites. But there are now modifications, or there are now designs available wherein the cables can be installed at site without having the pump sent to the service center or the workshop or the factory. So we can design pumps by which we can have a completely isolated or a junction box kind of a design, an isolated chamber inside the submersible pump, wherein the cable can be repaired outside, and while doing the repair or the design repair of the cable, the electrical design or electrical parts of the motor are not exposed. So there is no damage to the motor while the cable being repaired or replaced. So these are the 4 or 5 adaptations that I mentioned, which a lot of manufacturers have adopted and learned from, and that is benefiting users. So I hope I have been able to communicate some of the learnings that we, as well as many manufacturers, have learned over time on site, and then used it in the design modifications of the pumps. Thank you.
So Siddharth, we have a few questions that have come up to you. So Abhijit Rai Chaudhary is asking this question, saying that is the nature of radial thrust chart the same for pumps with continuously rising curves and pumps with drooping curves also?
It's a good question. So Mr. Chaudhary, the what I showed you is a percentage basis curve. What I showed was the x-axis was the percent rated flow, on the y-axis was the percent of the maximum radial thrust. Now, if you have pumps with different curves, like if you have an axial flow pump with a different curve, or a mixed flow pump, or a radial flow pump with a different curve, the absolute values will change for the radial thrust, but the percentage wise radial thrust as a function of the flow will more or less remain the same. The absolute values will be different because the pressure generated by the pumps by different designs or different pumps with different types of curves will be different. But when you talk in terms of the relative terms, that is percentage, what we have shown in my slide, that will remain the same. So the nature of the curve is the same. When you talk about the relative percentages, in absolute terms, yes, it will be different. For a multi-stage pump where you have a 40 bar pump, obviously the curve will be, the absolute radial thrust will be very different from a single stage pump, which is the maximum pressure is, let's say, 10 bar instead of 40 bar.
So Desaja Kumarage has asked this question, Siddharth. The question is that other than the space saving advantage, what else can we expect by changing the horizontal shaft driven volute casting, double suction, split casting, centrifugal pump to a vertical arrangement? Would there be a change in efficiency, maintenance, and or repair?
So it's a very good question. In fact, my colleague, Mr. Kiran Vaidya, will be expanding on this point very much in detail in his presentation later on. But to answer this question in brief, space is a major benefit of converting ground-based OH1, OH2, BB1, BB2 type of pumps into vertical type of pumps. That is the split case or the end section type of pumps into vertical pumps. Now, what is very important is, apart from the space requirement, sometimes there is a critical suction requirement of the application. So in applications where the NPSH available is much lower or it can lead to cavitation of the pump. In such cases, vertical pumps can offer you the advantage that although there is a longer assembly of the shaft, the casing or the hydraulics are completely submerged inside the pump. So the NPSH-A is much better, or rather the concept of NPSH-A is completely changed when you talk about vertical pumps as against horizontal pumps in such applications. Having said that, we need to appreciate that the maintenance requirements, both in terms of cost and time, are certainly higher for vertical pumps compared to any type of horizontal installation pumps. But the space saving and the suction conditions are very important. And one application, which is very niche application, I would say, is that if there are toxic or very corrosive chemicals that are to be handled, like high temperature sulfuric acid or cyanides, so potassium cyanide, hydrogen cyanide, where you cannot afford or allow even a single drop of liquid to come out of the tank or fall out of the tank, because even if you have a double mechanical seal or whatnot, there is a possibility of the seal leakage and the liquid coming out. So in such cases, vertical pumps offer you that advantage that you can offer, you can pump the liquid without the health and environmental hazards associated with the pumping of such type of liquids.
So a follow-up question to that, Siddharth, that he's asked is that for the modification that was shown in the VS4 model of your presentation, have you considered the back pressure as well?
Yes, so it's a good question. So the back pressure basically will lead to reverse rotation of the impeller. And that is what needs to be designed for any type of pump, not only the modification that we have shown. For any type of pump, the possibility of back pressure needs to be considered, and the impeller should not loosen with the back pressure. And at the same time, it should not lead to any, I would say, undesirable deflections on the shaft at the same time. So the design that we have shown, it is, although I gave you an example of the forward flow, but even in the case of the reverse flow, which comes due to the back pressure, that is also being taken care of. And these pumps are running, at least what we have supplied, these pumps are running for over 13 years in very critical acidic slurry applications.
A question that I have, Siddharth, from you from DGraft Goodwill is, he says, can Kishore pumps be used for pumping high viscosity fluids like drilling, cutting, and drilling mud?
So any centrifugal pump or centrifugal principle based pump, centrifugally operated pump, they have limits in terms of how much viscosity they can handle. So normally this up to 20 centipoise or something like that, the centrifugal pump should be able to handle properly. But beyond that, all manufacturers recommend to shift to positive displacement pumps because of the higher viscosity requirements. So we do not make positive displacement pumps, but I'm sure that a lot of manufacturers can offer you pumps to offer such kind of liquids, because mud and highly viscous liquids have a different behavior and characteristics compared to what we call as the Newtonian fluids.
Siddharth, one more question from Anthony Fernandez is, can you discuss various sealing mechanisms, SEALING mechanisms used in your pumps and condition monitoring systems?
So I would assume that he's asking about the horizontal in-suction pumps or horizontal type of pumps for sealing. Now, basically, shaft sealing is categorized into two fundamental categories. One is what we call as the static sealing and the rotating sealing. So static sealing is what is referred to commonly as gland packing. And the second type of rotating sealing is what we use, what we call as the mechanical sealing. Now, mechanical seals are, within mechanical sealing, there are multiple types of combinations that are being used, what we call as the single seal, internally mounted, wherein the rotating component of the mechanical seal is exposed to the pressure side of the liquid. You have an externally mounted mechanical seal, wherein the static member of the mechanical seal is on the inside, that is on the pressure side. Then you have a double mechanical seal, wherein two mechanical seals are installed in various configurations with various types of flushing arrangements which are there. And this is more or less applicable for all types of pumps where sealing is required. So the options that I mentioned are used, be it split case, horizontal split case, or double suction pumps, or horizontal end suction pumps.
So Dilip Yevlekar, Siddharth is asking the question, do you have any kind of an app or a software to select motor pump set with performance graphs?
As Mr. Mistry mentioned during the panel discussion also, I think all of the manufacturers, we do offer the flexibility for the users to log in and do the selection for a specific type of the hydraulics that they're looking for. The motor part of the pump, so the software will typically suggest what size of the pump based on efficiencies will be possible for that given duty condition. The motor selection is also possible, and we do it, and a lot of manufacturers do it. But sometimes the motor selection is often dictated by the IS standards or the IC standards, that a motor has to be selected based on 10% or 20% or 25% of the end of the curve power of the pump. So we need to assess for every application the requirements and whether they are being governed by certain international or Indian standards for the selection of the motor after the pump.
So Ganesh Tyagi is asking this question, saying to avoid excessive radial thrust, we have seen two delivery discharge lines. How do we ensure equivalent flow from both sides?
So from the internal geometry of the volute, it is exactly, it is designed and calculated and manufactured in a way that, the passages allow the same amount of liquid, because flow is dictated by the pressure. The pressure will drive the flow. So as long as the pressure is maintained uniformly, the flow will be diverted, as long as obviously the passages are uniformly maintained as well. So it is a matter of design, and it has to be designed in a way that the pressure is distributed evenly and the passages are of the same size.
So Anthony is asking this question, Siddharth, saying, have you supplied pumps to the oil and gas sector, and for which applications?
So we have supplied the applications for the oil and gas sector, but typically in the what they call as the outside battery limit, OBL type of applications, be it horizontal pumps or vertical pumps or even submersible pumps, we have supplied, but in the outside battery limit applications.
Okay, I'll take one final question. Siddharth, we have an anonymous attendee who is asking this question. I would like to know about the generation of press load where HSE pumps tends to go behind and damages its alignment, consequently burning its bearing and tearing its coupling bolt and increases the vibration. Do you have any solution?
Can you repeat the first part? What type?
He says, I would like to know about the generation of press load where HSE pumps tends to go behind and damages the alignment.
Press load, I'm not exactly aware of this particular terminology, press load. HSE is horizontal split case. So horizontal split case basically are simply supported type of pumps, wherein the impeller is supported between two bearings at the two ends. So if there is an uneven load, actually there should not be any imbalance, because there is no imbalanced force. There should not be any alignment issue that is coming out of any even when there is a higher pressure. I'm not sure whether I'm answering the question correctly or I've understood the question correctly. But when you talk about HSE pumps, the press or the back pressure from the liquid acts in uniform case because it's a simply supported portion. Perhaps some of the panelists or other speakers who are experts in HSE pumps and this particular application can be able to give more better insights on this particular question.
So Siddharth, I'll take one final question for you. Bharat is asking this question, which pump is best for pumping sludge content along with grit?
So when you talk about grit, it is a hard or abrasive type of solids. And when you talk about sludge, that is a very soft kind of solid. So typically in STPs, you have a grit chamber wherein the hard solids are first of all removed before they enter the pumping stations, what they call as the grit chamber, and then the further solids or the sludge is passed on. Having said that, there are certain instances or applications where it has to be, the grit might or does come into the pump. In such applications, it is always advisable to have material that can handle the hard abrasive nature of the grit. And typically these are hard materials like NiHard, nickel hard, or chrome based alloys, which can be, they are very expensive. but they can give you longer life if you have the problem of grit, frequent grit issues, which lead to abrasion and erosion of the pump casing.
Thanks, Siddharth. For taking time out and sharing your, experiences with the audience. There are some unanswered questions which I could send across to you since, we are on a strict time schedule. So thank you very much, and I will have the questions sent across to you.
Certainly. I look forward to that. Thank you so much.